Hi and welcome everyone. I think we can get started. It's at least according to my watch here, it's 9:01, so I think it's a good time. Welcome to this webinar about security in Dynamics 365 and AX 2012. We'll take a moment here to talk you through how to work with the security framework found in these versions of Dynamics, and how to get started, basically. We like to think of the security model in Dynamics as you would in your everyday life, meaning that you would have to have control and access to your home, if you're an adult, to your car, and your office. Your role would come with duties like buying groceries, doing laundry, picking up kids, helping them in homework. And if you're a kid, you would have perhaps less duties, more privileges, I'd say, but you don't get to drive the car. And this way is also the way that Microsoft has defined the security access and roles compared to that. And the definitions of these will be explained during the talk. So Jesper, my colleague here, if you would please just take the next slide. My name is Fredrik Stenlund. I'm head of sales in Sweden. I have with me my colleague Jesper, who's a security consultant at BE-terna, and he's deep diving these questions all day long, among other things. I will leave over to him in a short while, but before that, I would like, please share the next slide. I'll just give you a super quick update on BE-terna, who we are. As I said, my role here in Sweden is sales managing. We are located in the whole Nordics and the vast countries in Europe. We have a lot of investments in knowledge on the Microsoft platform. We're a full Microsoft platform partner. We're top 1% partners. And yeah, we have a lot of ISVs to cover different industries. So that's very short about BE-terna. Next slide, please. During the presentation here, if you have any questions, you can find a Q&A section or a Q&A button on your top screen, I think. Please write your questions there. If there is time, we will answer them during the webinar. Otherwise, we'll come back to you with documentation from the presentation here, along with answers to your questions. They will be answered anonymously, but please write your name so we know who's asking. I think that's it. So without further ado, I will leave over to my colleague here, Jesper, to take it away. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Fredrik. My name is Jesper, and I have been part of the BE-terna family the last 3.5 years. I've worked at the Dynamics products the last 15 years, and in addition to security, I also work with the supply chain, finance, and sales. And today, I will talk a little bit about my experience with the security framework in Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, and why we should pay attention to this. Then I will give you a short introduction of the framework. I will talk a little bit about the licensing and how you can use either the standard roles in the system or our approach. After that, I will show you a demo of the framework, and in the end, I'll have a short wrap-up. From my experiences with the security framework, I often see a list of pains at our customers. First of all, the users often has too wide access to the system, and even with this wide access, they still continuously ask for more accesses. And in the end, they often gain the system administrator role simply so IT know for sure that they are not in lack of any access. When they have the roles, it is very hard for IT to remove any of the access because they are afraid that they break something, so the users cannot perform the daily operations. Also, if a user comes and asks for additional access that a colleague has, it is very hard to copy that single access they need, and often they get the colleague's full access. And in general, I hear from the customers that they would like to be in better control of who can access what, but they simply don't know how to start this task. And also for me as a consultant, it is often hard when I make customizations to also include the security part, because it is hard to know how we reach the correct users in an effective way. And this leads us to why we should pay attention to the security framework. And it is that a one-liner simply to be controlled who can access what in the system. If we are in control, we do not need to assign system administrators to anyone in the organization, and we will be able to ensure that all users have the sufficient access, and also that the users has only access to the elements that they need, meaning that they only see what they need, and this gives the users a much better user experience, simply because they see a smaller application. And if we are in control, we can also limit access to sensitive data that could, for example, be bank data or, for example, prices. And also, if we are in control, we can better use the segregation of duties framework that is in the system. And for you who does not know what this framework does, then it simply states that if a user can access a certain if the user can perform a certain duty, at a certain process, then the user is not able to perform another process. For example, if the user is able to invoice a purchase order, then the user should not be able to receive the items. Other elements that we gain is that we potentially will be able to lower the license costs. We can easily document the used access. And if we use our practice, then we also forces the management to take decisions about where in the organization the business processes should be placed. And it will also be easier both to maintain changes in the organization and also changes in the system when we get new customizations. I'll simply start to take a short look on the system here. We are here on the left side. We see the system when the user log on the system. And what the user see is list pages, forms, views, reports, and so on. And these are the core elements that we are working with when we're talking about security and access. Because if we take a look at the security framework, then we see it contains of roles, duties, and privileges, where roles are the highest level of our security elements, and these are the ones that we use when we want user to gain access to the system, simply by adding these roles to the users. And in the system, we have more than 240 roles that we can use as standards. And if we take these roles and open these, we will see that they are a collection of duties. A duty is equivalent to a business process. So each time a user has to perform a process, then the user needs a duty for this. And in the system, we have more than 2,400 duties included. And it is also on this level we work that when we're talking about segregation of duties. Again, if we open these duties, then we can see that they contain of privileges. And these are our lowest level of security elements. And it is on these where we add permission to, for example, forms, button, and list pages. When we're talking about the roles, then you see an example here on 3 roles. Here we have the sales clerk, the inventory accountant, and accountant. And in the third column, we see here how many duties there are in each of these roles. And for example, if you take the sales clerk, we can see in the fourth column that if you're a sales clerk, then you are able to maintain credit cards. You're able to inquire about payment status for customer invoices, and so on. After each of these duties, we see a number, and this number indicates in how many roles are, indicates how many roles are associated to this duty. If you take, for example, the last one under accountant, they maintain fixed assets disposal journals, then we can see it has a number 1, meaning that this is only associated to the accountant role. So this means that if you have a user that only maintain the fixed asset disposal journals, then if we use the standard roles, we have to associate the accountant to this user, and even the user only need 1 duty, then the user gains 203 duties. And this is not sufficient, but of course, from BE-terna we have a solution on this. Here we see a view how we assign roles to users, where we have 2 users, where one user is sales clerk and inventory accountant, and another user is accountant. And we assign the roles for each company. So for example, the first user here could be a sales clerk in one company, an inventory accountant in another company, and maybe in a third company, the user have both roles. And we can also see how the roles are divided in duties and how the duties are divided in privileges. When we're talking about license, then I have the figure from before, just where the arrows goes not from top to down, but from down to top. And it's because, for example, if we take a privileges, this privilege might contain, let's say, 10 different permissions. And if 9 of the permission has a low license, and the last permission has a high license, then the privilege will also have a high license. And the same for the duties. The duties license are determined by the highest license of the privilege. So, for example, if all of the privileges are in a middle license, and we add an additional license and add an additional privilege with a high license, then the duty also get a high license. And the same also occurs for the roles, that the license of the roles is based on the highest license on its duties. And again, if the role is in a low license, and let's say it has hundreds of duties, and we add just a single permission with a high license, then the role will go from a low license to a high license. And here we see an overview of the license types we have, where the first one is none, and that is used when we talk about customized elements. There's no Microsoft elements in it, and these are there's no license. And for the users that only log on the system and, for example, view some data, for example, sales orders and products, then for these users, they will be licensed by the team member license that costs 7.5 euros per user per month. If the user needs to create data, for example, maintain a sales order, update a purchase order, or for example, create a new production order, then the user will be licensed by the activity license that costs almost 50 euros per month. If the user needs to create ledger transactions, for example, by creating a sales order invoice or post a general ledger journal, then we are in the high license that are divided in finance, supply chain, commerce, and projects. And for these, for the first one, you pay a base that is 168 euros per user per month. And if you also need some of the others, then you have to pay an add-on on 28.1 euros. A little special for the project is that if you only use a project, then you pay 112.3 euros per user per month. And if you use the standard roles to gain the user access, then we have out of the box more than 240 roles that we can use. And they are therefore very easy to implement because we simply assign them to the users. But this approach has some disadvantages, and that is that users will get too wide access because the roles has many duties in them. And as we saw before, some of the duties are associated to only one or a few standard roles. And if we need to gain user access to these duties, then they need a whole role and not these single duties. And also users, they very easily get access to elements they either don't need or worse, elements that they're not supposed to access. By this approach, it is very hard to avoid the high licenses to the users. And then my customers often ask me, isn't it possible to either to add or remove duties from the standard roles? And yes, it is. And if we do this, then we will have some level of customized roles. And we have more than 2,400 duties that we can choose between. And if we are lucky, we also might gain lower license cost for these users. But this approach also has some disadvantages. And that is, first of all, that the duties that are in the system, they are not comparable with our processes, and we cannot use them one-to-one. For example, if we have some users that need to maintain sales orders, then yes, we do have a duty for that in the system, but it might lack some access that we need. And also for the roles that we already use, it is hard to know the impact on the users if we try to remove some of the duties. And also for the duties that we use, they also might be too big and contain access that we don't need. And if we need a certain duty, then this duty might have a too high license cost compared to what we need from it. And how do we solve that? For BE-terna, we simply only use customized duties that are comparable to business operations and business processes one by one. Meaning that if you have a process, then we create a duty that is equivalent to that process. All of these duties, they are defined by your organization, and we only add those privileges to the duties that we need. And to better separate these from the standard duties, we use prefix on this, like 100, 101, and so on. And when we create these, we are taking license into consideration. By this approach, we get a framework where we create reusable and also business-approved Lego bricks that we can use anywhere in the organization. So if we first have created a duty for the maintained sales order process, then we can reuse this anywhere in the organization because it has been approved by the business. And in the future, if anything changes in the process, then we only have one duty to update. So it's also very easy to maintain. And when we are talking about roles, then we also use customized roles where we only add our customized duties. And again, for these roles, we also use prefixes so we can separate these from the standard roles. And again, when we add duties to the roles, we also do this under respect of the license. And how do we do this? We simply make a list in an Excel sheet where we put in all our duties, and then we create a column for each needed role. And then we ask the business, which processes do you perform? And then we can sign off the duties for these processes. And then it's visible for everyone to see who can do what. And it's also easy for example, to the IT revision to see who can access what. And also, it's very easy for the management to have an overview of who in the organization perform which processes. And from this, can be able to move this from one place in the organization to another place, either because it's not sufficient that some users have some of these accesses, or simply to reduce the license costs. And this approach I'm talking about here has been used for several Nordic customers and all the great customer satisfaction. And in this moment here, we are implementing this in for two Swedish customers and a Danish customer as well. And due to our experiences, we have already built up a toolbox where we have 140 predefined duties. Then we can use to your organization, so we don't start from scratch. And these are all duties that are more used in the Nordics compared to the one that Microsoft have. And I will now show you a demo where I will first show you the security framework, and then I will show how you can remove and add access, and also how we can reduce license on a role simply to lower its license costs. So what you see here is Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. And when we're talking about the security and access, we simply go to the system administration module. And from here, we go to security and to security configuration. And here we see a list of all the roles that we have in the system. For example, we have here the accounting role that we saw on the slides before. And if we want to see which duties that is contained in this one, we simply click on the duties here, and then we can see all the duties that is in this role. If we want to see all the duties, we simply click the duties button here, and then we get a list of the duties, and also the same with the privileges, that if you want to see which privileges we have, then we simply click the button here, and we get the list here. For each of these elements, we have something called view permissions, and if I do that on our role here, for the accounting role, then we can see for this role that it has a finance license. And we could have a case where we have some users that need to have access to maintain a sales order, and I will now show you how we will do that. So first of all, I will create my own role. I simply push here the create new button, and I assign it a name that could be 100 and sales. And then on this, I simply add access to one of the duty in the systems. So I simply click here and state maintain sales order, and I select my duty here. And we can now see that we have one unchanged object, meaning that we can work in this framework here. And when we are finished, we can publish our changes. So I will publish this now. And then now I will associate this new role to my test user. So I simply go to users and users here. And then I will simply find my test user here, JBP test. And on this, I will assign the role. And here we will also see another benefit because of the prefix. I will have my role in the top of the list. When I assign roles to a user, I can, on the assign organization, determine which companies that this role should be assigned to. If I don't do anything, then it will be assigned to all companies. So now I will open another browser. This is my test user. And open the demo environment. And if I go to the modules, we can see now that we don't have as many modules as before. And if I go to the sales and marketing, we can see here that this duty maintains sales orders that we have access to, for example, to go to the all sales orders. We can open return orders. We have access to sales journals, order confirmations, and also access to, for example, delete some history and delete sales orders and quotations. If we, for example, go to the sales orders here, then we can see that we can access both the order lines and also the order header, and we can see the information. We can go and see the sales order journals, and we can also, for example, generate a sales order confirmation. So if I generate a confirmation here, I click OK. Then we can now see that the sales order confirmation journal is active. And I can see again here the overview. I can see the lines. And if I also want, I can also make a print. If we go back to the module, it could be the case where we state that we don't want the user to be able to, for example, delete quotations. And if that is the case, I can simply click this one here, and I can see that the user here is able both to edit and delete the quotations. If I take the URL here and go back to the browser where I have system administrator rights, I have access to options and the security diagnostics. If I click on this, I get a list of the roles, the duties, and privileges that have access to this form. And here we can see we have a privilege called delete quotation lines. And this is simply the element I have to remove from my duty if I don't want the users to access the quotation lines. And to do that, I have to go back to our framework here to the security configuration. And I never change the standard elements. So in this case, when I want to change it, I simply create my own. And I do that to go by going to the duties and find my duty. I can maintain sales order, and it is this one here. And I simply duplicate it, give it a name. I remember my prefix. And on this one, I simply find the one I want to delete. And then I simply remove it. And then I go back to our role. And remember to update this one, because on the role, I want to remove the standard duty and add my own duty. So now we can publish the changes simply by pushing publish all. And then if I go back to our test user and try to update this, then we can see that we have no longer access to this form. And if we go to a module, we can see now here that the element is gone. If we go to the customers, we can see that we have access to recalculate credit limits. And maybe that could also be a requirement from the business that they want to view the customers. And to gain this access, I simply go back to our browser and I find the form that I want to give access to. And this is also in the account receivable under customers and over customers. And as before, I go to options and security data diagnostics, where I can see all the roles, duties, and privileges that give access to this form. And the one that I want to use is the view customer records. So I simply take this one here, go back to our duty, and simply add it. I publish the changes. And then if I update my URL, we will now see that now we have also access to the customers. And if I click on this, and for example, open this customer here, Then we can see that we have access to see the information of the customers. And if there was a request from the business that they from time to time have to change the order pool, for example, on the sales order, and they also have to create new one, then they're not able to do it right now. But if we want to give them this access, we simply go back to our customers here. And find the sales pool. And go to options and security diagnostics. And then we can see that we have two privileges. We have one where we can see the order pools and one where we can maintain. In our case, we don't want to delete, but only to create. So this one is our best choice. So I will simply start to take this here and add it to our duty. I publish the changes to the changes and go back to our test user. And we can now see that we can now access the sales order pool. By now it is blue and I can push it. And we can now see that I just remove the filter. I can now see we can see the pools. We are able to create a new one. For example, let's say 06 and call it test. And we are also able to delete it. But in case, as mentioned, we don't want the user to be able to delete. We only want the user to be able to create. So that means that we have to go back and change these privileges. So again, we go back here to the security configuration. And again, we don't change the standard elements. So I simplify the one that we have used and create a new privilege for this. I can call this 101 and see create sales pool. Because then on this one here, we can see should be something here. Just a moment. I don't know what happened. I just try again here. 102 and create. That is strange because there should be an element here. Okay, so I will just, in this case, just use the standard one. And on this one, we can see that it has this display menu item, and it has access both to read, update, create, and delete. And on this, I will simply remove the delete access here. And if we go back to our test user, we can now see that the user has only access to delete, but is still able to create new and edit those we have. So this is the way how we can reduce access on existing elements. If I go back to the roles and take a look at our 100 sales role and look at permissions, then we can see it has license that is operations. And operations is similar to finance, to the highest license. And if we want to know why, we can simply take the license here and make a filter, and we can see it is due to this, the access to the sales pool, that we have this high license. If we remove this, then we will have a lower license. And in case that that we have, for example, 40 users that is going to have this role, then we could try to investigate whether we could remove this access and only put it to a few users in that department. And then the others, they have to go to them each time they have to create a new pool, simply to lower their license. And if this is something that is possible, then I can show you here how we will do that. I will start to go back to all pools here and go to security diagnostics and see that we have already a privilege where they can view the order pools. And normally when you view data, then you are in a low license. So what I will do is I will remove this one from our role and add this one and see how this influences our license. So I simply go back here. I find our duty here, go to privileges, and find the one we already have. I simply remove it, and I will add the view access. And then I will save the changes. And we can now see that the user has only view access now, and we can also see that on our role, we have now reduced the license on these users. When we have done that, of course, we have to remember to give the access back to the 2 or 3 super users that then will be responsible for creating new sales pool. And to do that, I simply create a new duty. I say create new. I can call this 101, create sales pools. And then on this one, I will add our privileges here. And they also need an additional role. I can call this one 101 sales super users because they have extra access. And on this one, I will add our newly created duty. And we can see now that on the basic role that we have activity license, and our enhanced role, we have the operations license. And if we go back to our test user, again, we can see we have only access to view. But if my test user was a super user, then I simply will go to, oh, I just have to publish these. Then I will simply go to the test user and add the additional role. Like this. And then we see that our test user goes from a regular sales user to a super sales user. Simply now we have the additional access. Yes. And that was the demo for today. And I can see it is not so quick. I try again. No. Let's see if it's better here. or else we just have to have a little patience. So just a moment. Yeah, that was the demo, and I will now wrap up about our framework that we use here at BE-terna, that it is structurable, scalable, and transparent. And that this approach, it is very easy to maintain when changes occur in the organization, or if we have to adapt new customizations. As we saw in the demo, it's very cost-effective regarding license, and it can be combined with the segregation of duties framework much easier than if you use Microsoft duties, because as we saw before, Microsoft have more than 2,400 duties that we have to take into account. But this approach here, we normally have about 150 till 200 duties, so that's much easier. And we can control the access on a very detailed level, as shown as I did show you in the demo. That was on a record level, where we can state whether the user should have access to read, update, create, or delete data, but we can also do it on the field level. Thank you very much for listening to me today, and I will hand the word to you, Fredrik.
Thanks a lot, Jesper, very insightful. And I just wanted to wrap up a little bit based on that and address you who's participating here today, and just let you know that if you feel that you're not today currently at 100% control of your security model, we can help you. And the way we propose to do that is simply by setting up a workshop 2 to 3 hours, going through and analyze your current state, the users, roles, user groups, needs and requirement, and then come up with an overall plan for security and access. We will have a look at the estimated cost to get to the preferred state, if there is such. And also, as Jesper just talked about, the potential license cost savings and align on potential next steps. So that's what we recommend if you feel that you would like to engage more on this topic. And how do you then connect with us? That will be the next slide, Jesper, if you will. So please reach out if you have any questions regarding this. And of course, as we said before, we'll send out the documentations along with questions that you had during the presentation and respond to those. And we'd be happy to help and discuss further with you. And yeah, thanks for joining today's webinar, and I hope to see you soon again on another topic. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.